From Alex Albon to Alex Bowman to Alex Palou, Money Lap has you covered. All right, hello and welcome to the Money Lap podcast. I'm Parker Kligerman, joined as always by Landon Cassill. This is our podcast about all motorsports. As always, check out themoneylap.com for the Money Lap newsletter. It comes to your inbox 3 times a week. Mondays, highlights. Wednesdays, news and fun stuff. And Friday, of course, news, fantasy, and all the other fun stuff out in the motorsports world. It's the best 5 minutes in motorsports. It's growing insanely, Landon. Almost 300 new subscribers, say that easily, this week alone. It's absolutely doing very well, so that's awesome. And cool to see people interact with it, opening it up and finding everything they want from the motorsports world right there in their inbox 3 times a week. Let's do the PR lap. This is where we get to talk about ourselves, even though we just kind of did that. And we got a big deal going on. It's Firecracker 400, week 2 already. Week 1 was the prelims, 8 prelims, over 360 drivers entered this event. We narrowed it down to the top 88 who go into 2-round qualifying Tuesday night, we're on Tuesday recording this, and then Wednesday will be second round, which if you're listening to this, that will be on eraser.gg's Twitch. But this was wild. It was a crazy 2 nights, almost 5 hours each night of broadcast, watching all those drivers try and make it to the top 88.
It was like real racing. We had actual delays and almost like weather delays in. I know I'm making our producers cringe here by talking about this publicly, but hey, that's racing. we had delays. We had iRacing issues. Although I shouldn't blame iRacing like that, but every once in a while, especially when you push the limits of the platform like we do with our events, you're almost inevitable to find a bug. And when you're broadcasting live to thousands of people with hundreds of competitors, that's what is it? Murphy's Law. If something can go wrong, it will.
Yep.
So we had to soldier through it. We had a couple broadcasts that went past midnight, but man, we got through them. We got over almost 400 competitors. We got through, narrowed them down to 88, which is funny because it seems like not that many competitors, right? It seems like a small group, and yet tonight and tomorrow night, Wednesday, July 19th, on our Twitch on eRacer, we will qualify all 88 of those competitors one at a time, all the pressure on them, the whole world looking on to see if they can make it into the Firecracker 400 with a custom setup, no fixed setups. This isn't done for you. You had to build it yourself. These drivers are really put to the test.
They really are, and it's the intensity and the pressure is immense. What Dale Jr. said, it was the most nervous he's ever been for a qualifying lap was in the Firecracker 400 or something like that, or it was one of the more nervous times he's had. It's going to be cool. We'll probably break a track record for us in this event tonight from what I hear. And the top 20 on Tuesday night lock in, and then everyone else has the option to either rerun or stand on their time in the second night. So that's really an interesting show. So looking forward to it.
Yeah. And
we also
I don't know if we have it later, but thanks to our sponsor Thrustmaster, they're promoting their T818 direct drive base, wheelbase through the Firecracker 400 this year, which is super cool. The great new product on the market. Parker, I think you've got one. I don't know if you've driven with it yet or what the feel is, but it's pretty awesome that Thrustmaster came on board.
It's amazing, and I love it so far, and I've actually been practicing Pocono with it, and I did a truck race earlier today, and I couldn't believe how fast I was up to speed because you can just feel the saturation of the tires so well, like better than I've ever been able to feel in iRacing. So either I'm becoming more adept at ability to feel saturation of the tire, or the more realistic situation is that I just got this incredible wheel, the T818 from Thrustmaster, that it's really unbelievable. And I did a video that you'll see on the broadcast where I'm testing it out for the first time, and I'm blown away because it's just so realistic. There's so many finer things that I'm feeling than I ever have before. And so I really think if you're in the market for a sim racing wheel, check out the Thrustmaster T818. That is not just a plug. Because they're a partner of the Firecracker 400, I would say this because I've driven other direct drive wheels, but they didn't give me this sensation, this like high definition, minute things that I feel through the wheel that I just have never felt before. So I also have the Sparco rally wheel that I feel is really close to a stock car, and it feels amazing as well. So I love that. Speaking of reviews, so you just got my amazing. Well, hold on.
I know.
Go ahead.
I want. Well, for all the listeners out there that are like, oh my God, get through the e-racing stuff. When you said you've driven a lot of different direct drive wheels, drivers that have raced professionally and raced in simulators have driven everything from $100 wheelbase in their home simulator to a $25,000, steering system in the simulators at Chevy and Toyota and everything. So it is amazing the spectrum of wheels. It's not just a hobby, because there are these companies on this never-ending search for the most realistic wheel. So anyways, let's get to your reviews. This is the most important part of the show for you. I know that.
And that is the incredible part. We've just to add on to that, we've driven sims, as you put it, $100 or up to millions of dollars, and everything in between. And I will tell you, this wheel is right up there with the best. So, speaking of reviews, we have hit 86 reviews on Apple Podcasts. On our quest for 100, we have severely slowed down in the amount being added. So, listeners, tell your friends, tell your parents, tell your, friends to go to leave a review. First, listen to the podcast, then review. But 86 in our quest to 100, and we had two great ones this week. One that was 5 stars, insightful insight. Landon Parker, or Parker and Landon if you're so inclined, do a great job of breaking down the goings-on in the motorsports world, from Alex Albon to Alex Bowman to Alex Palou. Money Lap has you covered. That's from B. Hester. Thank you, buddy. That's a good one. And then we also had 5-star podcast.
Big Alex fan.
Go ahead. Yeah, big Alex guy.
Big Alex fan.
5-star podcast hosted by 5-star hosts. The podcast is incredibly decent. The dynamic of a pit reporter and a crypto trader hosting a racing podcast works surprisingly well. Wait, we're neither of those things anymore. These guys are all incredibly knowledgeable about all things motorsports and can work in ad reads like no other. I appreciate their insight on the inner workings of the racing world, and their newsletter is a blessing to the inbox. Eliminating spoilers from the newsletter was a welcome change.
That makes me feel good.
Speaking of spoilers, don't forget you can go to spoilerdiecast.com for all your diecast needs. Keep up the great work, PK and Landon. I can't wait for the next episode. We got a sponsor plug in a review. Thank you to Pat Mall _8. Thank you.
I mean, is that how you like? Are we going to take this review into every sponsor pitch and meeting with for renewals with Spoiler Diecast and anybody else to be like, hey, if you want to know if our fans are engaged in our ad reads, how about the fans that are literally writing their own ad reads for SpoilerDiecast.com? Go to SpoilerDiecast.com for all of your diecast needs. You know what, Parker? That actually makes me think. I have been on a quest for the best possible diecast. If you're a diehard racing fan, then you need to check out Spoiler Diecast. With one of the largest inventories of in-stock products on the industry, they offer a wide selection of diecast and apparel for NASCAR, dirt, sprint cars, IndyCar, and F1. And if you're worried about shipping costs, don't be. All orders are $20, shipped for free, and they even have a same or next day shipping policy. Plus, their pre-order system means you can reserve your favorite diecast and only pay when it's ready to ship. And if you want to save even more, Parker, use promo code MONEYLAP at checkout to get free shipping and 5% off your order. It's the most aggressive offer in the space and exclusive to our listeners. Even the ones that write the reviews, especially the ones that write reviews with our sponsor in them. So head on over to SpoilerDiecast.com and get your racing fix today.
Maybe one day the Firecracker 400 winner will have a diecast sold on Spoiler Diecast. You never know. Crazier times.
We have done that. I think we've had the Firecracker winner has gotten diecast, so maybe we'll get it sold on SpoilerDiecast.com.
I love that. We just got to make a couple of them. That was awesome. Also, Money Lap is spreading. We first sponsored a Mazda MX-5 Cup car at Watkins Glen with Sam Paley, who put in a valiant effort. We have now sponsored the Fast Lap Award across 4 different classes of kids racing at Woodleaf Raceway in North Carolina this past weekend on Sunday. 4 of them won, setting the fastest lap. So the Money Lap not only supports top levels like MX5 Cup, but even the grassroots level of the young kids coming up to try and be professional race car drivers. Love that.
That is so cool. I'm glad that we did that. Maybe the Money Lap can be like this brand that engages with just the up and coming racers around the country. So we've already talked about, Parker. Maybe this is kind of building in front of an audience type thing, or what do you call it?
Build in public.
We talked about the whole concept. Yeah, build in public. So we've talked about this idea of getting the Money Lap sticker on local racers. Like maybe we have some kind of bonus or something where your racers run a Money Lap sticker, and it's like almost our own contingency award that we just run across short track racers and grassroots racers everywhere. So this is the start.
You know what
of
it is?
Thank you, Parker. Good
Yeah.
Good deal at Woodleaf. What's that?
I like that, and maybe it expands in that sense to like if you win a pole in any division with X amount of cars, with our sticker on your car, we send you a bonus. I don't know how we would make that work or how we could feasibly do that, but that could be a way. Could be cool.
Yeah.
So
that's the idea. Like if people just run our sticker or paint a Money Lap helmet or run our sticker on their helmet or on their fire suit, and they have a picture of themselves in with a pole award, then we'll give them a prize. We'll give them $50. I don't know.
Bam.
We have endless amounts of money, don't we?
Oh yeah,
we could just
we're
do
rolling
that forever.
As long as we sell more diecast,
Yeah, spoilerdiecast.com. You'll be just jump right into another spoiler ad read. We're gonna have to do a few more ad reads to pay for that.
Yeah, we have to pay for all these. Congrats to all the kids at Woodleaf. Really cool, to see that. And we're going to be posting some pictures on our social media of the kids that won, so it's pretty cool. Just part of my, PR lap is talking about our own racing. I raced at New Hampshire this past weekend, for those that don't know, in the Xfinity Series. But I want to call out this weekend because it was a super smooth weekend for our race team. Probably the smoothest of the year, although we didn't set the world on fire. We didn't do anything spectacular. It was one of those weekends for a team that's came in there 6 points outside the playoffs. Was as smooth as could be. We executed on everything we were doing in terms of unloading off the truck in practice and being fairly quick. Happy with the race car. A couple tweaks in the qualifying. I underdrove it by about a tenth, which would have put us easily in the top 10. And then we got in the race, and I felt like we had a solid, probably 8th or 10th place car in the first run. And then we made an adjustment on the second run. I felt like we could have driven in the top 5. And unfortunately, wrecked us on a restart stack up. That part sucked because we didn't get the result. But everything else leading up to that was so cool and encouraging for our race team. Even our pit stops are great. So it was just one of those weekends that no one will ever see or know why it was so good. But it was so good for our team, and it gets me so excited for these races that lead up to the playoffs because I think we have opportunities to win. I think we can more than points ourselves into it with the success we'll have in the coming weeks. So it's got me excited, really pumped up for our whole Big Machine Racing team and how well everyone's doing. So on the stack up, basically I was giving a lot of space to the cars in front of me on the restarts because you'll know this, Landon, a lot of times guys spin tires there and you get those stack ups. And on the first restart, or the first start and then the restart, I gave space because it just seemed like I wanted time to react, right? Which is so funny because the thing that ruined us is I didn't react in time to the eventual stack up that got us. But I had been giving space because I noticed even on the initial start, I was spinning the tires a little bit. I was like, okay, there's a real loss of grip on the bottom. And even on the top side, it's just not great grip because the asphalt is so worn there. So I gave that space, but that was actually my downfall because I had so much space to the 11 that when he connected to the 10 in front of me, when the stack up happened, I hit him, but it was like hitting 2 cars or 3 cars at once. There was no movement.
Right.
So it was like hitting a brick wall for the front of my car, and it destroyed us. And I felt like an idiot because I was like, well, damn it. Like, how did I not slow down in time, whatever? And then when I watched it back, I was like, well, But the very thing I was doing to protect us was actually the thing that hurt us. And in that point, I don't know what I could do differently. I don't know if you have an opinion on that. But personally, from inside, I replayed a lot of times in my head. I looked at the SMT and I thought, okay, I don't know what I'd do differently other than in that moment possibly just try and shoot left, I guess, because I was catching him so quickly suddenly. But I don't know. It was I don't know if we really had a chance with how they were all connected in front of me with the room I was giving.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I feel like those, when someone gets it as bad as you did there, it's like there's when you have a chain reaction like that, there's just somebody in the line at the right spot that has a 0% chance of surviving. You know what I mean? Like you're at the peak of I'm sure there's a scientific term for it, but like you're like at the peak velocity point of the slinky. You know what I mean? Where the people ahead of you have a chance of surviving and the people behind you have a chance of surviving, but like you're the lucky dog, not the lucky dog. You're just the lucky contestant that has a less than 0 chance of surviving. I've bent my car plenty of times in an accordion effect, but I have had one accordion incident that looked about like yours, and that was like in 2009, I think. I was driving at Phoenix in the Nationwide Series, Xfinity Series, and I was wide open on the gas when I made contact with the cars in front of me. I'm pretty sure I ripped the carburetor off. And I think that I was in that lucky position that you were in, where it's like it's impossible to see.
Yeah.
The only difference, I don't know. I'm not putting anything on your spotter, Brandon, but at New Hampshire, you can see that from the spotter stand a little bit easier than you can other tracks. Mm-hmm. So, but that's just such a. Actually, you know what? I don't want to go the spotter route because it's really not the spotter's fault. But like,
no.
The one point I do want to make about that is anytime you have a restart where all of the cars end up on a straightaway for the restart, it is just high risk for that type of jam up.
Yep.
That's my point number one. I have a second point to watch out for. So point number one is like anytime it's on a straightaway. So, go back and think about all kinds of tracks where we've seen stack ups, and you think like Indianapolis Oval has some spectacular stack ups. Like anywhere like Road America could have some spectacular stack ups. Anywhere that has a long straightaway for the restart, just super risky for a stack up. And then for your particular restart, I don't exactly remember, but the other high risk that I would look for is if the leader gets to the first line on the restart zone and doesn't go and decides to wait until later in the restart zone. That's a high risk scenario.
And that's exactly
in my mind, if I'm restarting in my mind, then I'm glad to hear that. And it's validating my point. If I am in your position, you're 6 rows back or 5 rows back, so really you're not even thinking about your performance on that restart. You're a lot of times on those restarts at New Hampshire, you're thinking about protecting yourself on those restarts, right? To avoid what happened to you. And that's not to say you didn't do a good job. I'm just saying like that's sometimes once you get to 5 rows on back, you're thinking about protecting more so than anything else.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking about the leader. And I focus on having my spotter count down the leader to the first line. And if the leader gets to the first line, when my spotter says 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, if the leader gets to 1 and the field still hasn't gone yet, I'm like not going, not going to go. There's no way I'm no longer anticipating the restart. Because I know that that's the scenario where some shenanigans are going to happen. And and obviously that's what happened to you. Like because a lot of times the leader gets deep into the restart zone, and then you're playing this jockeying game, and the leader somebody ends up brake checking somebody, and that's just seems to be what happens. And it's a range from destroying the field to just a little jam up, and even a little jam up can kill your front bumper, and your race is over with. So I just really look for the leader going early. Which really, not to get on a tangent on this, but like, as the leader, you should go early. That you should change it. Well, first of all, you should change it up. If you're going to lead the whole race, you're running in the top 3 the whole race, you should change it up. But you should be setting yourself up to go early at the end of the race. Because going early is your best chance of getting away from the field. So
they're not ready for it. Surprise.
They're not ready for it.
Element of surprise.
In fact, I would even say, and this has been coached to me as well, when it comes to a game, like a final moments, fourth quarter situation, green, white, checkered situation, you're the leader, you're the control car restart. You should go early in the restart zone. In fact, you should probably flirt with going before the restart zone and put it in NASCAR's hands to make the call.
Mm-hmm.
Because NASCAR doesn't want to make that call, and it's not a bad strategy to put them in a position to have to make the call, right? Because if you can go a half a car length early, or like maybe not even a couple feet early, you're going to catch the field off guard so much. And if it's a couple feet, NASCAR is probably going to look at that and be like, we know he went early, but we're not going to call it.
Shh.
So, hey, look, I'm just trying to be real. I want the audience to know. When you watch a NASCAR race and you see, guys that are up there a lot, the Denny Hamlin or Brad Keselowski, guys that are great in the restart zone, Joey Logano, when you see them go 4 feet before the line, they know what they're doing. It's not because they don't know where the car's at. They know what they're doing. They know that their car's 4 feet before the line. They're pushing the issue, and they're putting it in NASCAR hands to say, I dare you to call me. Ruin your own race, right? Ruin your own race. Yep. Call me back. But it's a green, white, checkered, and you're going to see a great restart, and I'm going to win this race, and I dare you to take it away from me. But the longer you wait in a restart zone as the control car, the better chance you give your opponent. Because once you get to the end of the restart zone, your opponent knows that you have to go.
Yep. So anyway, we should point out
there's
that
my tangent.
John Hunter did nothing wrong in the restart from all the analytics I saw, the numbers. It was actually a lot of the accordion was caused, one, by exactly what you talked about. He went late in the box, which he's fully allowed to do. He was maybe overly anticipated by Chandler on the bottom, and then behind him was Cole Custer, who had laid back so far and then went for a run and then stopped, which caused a major. That's what really caused the accordion. And I think one thing to bring up that and I really think if Cole were to do that again, NASCAR would have a stern response for what he did, because it was entirely precipitated off of his gap that he had created with the leader trying to get a launch. And then, the amount of cars that were involved because of this really made NASCAR angry. And I think the other side of it, when you talked about the straightaways where tracks at super straight, Indy, New Hampshire, maybe even Pocono, it's actually a little earlier, so I don't know about that. But these places where it's super straight, you think about when we're at like Charlotte and restarting, or Bristol, you can see, as we corner, you can see all the cars ahead of you. If you're on the bottom side or the top side, you can kind of see around. When you cut where I was with Daniel Hemrick, I cannot see anything but Daniel Hemrick. Like, that's all I can see, and 1 or 2 cars to my right? Like, that's it. So being on the fifth or sixth row, you have no reference. I cannot see anything ahead of me, as opposed to places where it's curved, where you can see that. And so that's why you get those stack-ups, because 1, we're all anticipating. 2, we're going off the car in front of us. So if that car goes, then stops from the accordion effect, that's the thing that I think causes those stack-ups that we saw at New Hampshire. And to your point, I do believe, similar, that when I looked at everything, there's just a place in that slinky that's the worst place to be, and we happen to be in it. And it's, won't make that mistake again, or hopefully won't be there again, because if I'd gotten by the 10 and 11 on those laps prior, where I was passing them before that caution came out and just got a little loose under the 10, if I make that pass, maybe we're not involved in that spot. So that's how it goes.
Well,
hey, By the way,
that, but then if you did go back and you said, if you said, all right, how can I, prevent this in the future? You have your checklist of A, is the leader going early, and then B, really focusing on your spotter telling you when the leader goes, not just when your row is going. That's maybe a tough thing to do, but
no, it's a great point. I'm gonna put that in the notes. I haven't thought of it that way as much as I normally pay attention to that when I'm in like the top 5 or 4 rows, 3 rows, because I'm anticipating. I can see it and I work it myself, but I've never thought about using the spotter in that respect.
It's mental. It's all mental.
Yeah, we'll do that. All mental game. Landon, we mentioned it earlier, but our newsletter has been growing a ton as of the last 2 weeks, and a lot of it has come from some big brain decisions that we've been making. Do you think we're getting smarter?
Every day, buddy. Every day.
Well, I love that because I do think we are, and I believe it's because of Four Sigmatic Think Coffee. I'm being honest when I say this. This is the only coffee that I have on race days because I genuinely think it makes me smarter. Now, you might be wondering, those listening out there, how does it make you smarter? Well, it's smarter. It's coffee infused with functional mushrooms that work to wake up your mind. They say many people feel the effects in as little as 7 days. Mine was quicker than that. I'm just not going to lie. I even used their vanilla plant-based protein and focus product. So, if you want to try this coffee that I'm telling you, I believe is making us smarter, making me a better race car driver, and helping grow our newsletter, please go try their Think Starter Pack. It's 40% off. And then if you use the code MONEYLAP, it's another 15% off. So that's 55% off. I may be smarter, but I'm not a rocket scientist. I think this is a deal. So go check it out. That's at foursigmatic.com. It's F-O-U-R, then Sigmatic, S-I-G-M-A-T-I-C.com. Use that code MONEYLAP. Go try this coffee. I'm telling you, this is some of the best coffee in the world, and it might make you smarter. So it's what we're using. How'd I do?
That's great. I've been you did great. I'm a big fan of mushrooms over here. Big fan of Four Sigmatic. Coffee, the protein, I use it both pretty much daily, if not one or the other daily, because we've got the protein down here with us, the beach, and love it. Definitely feel smarter.
Some after boxing today.
You've been doing a great.
I look forward to it.
There you go.
It's the best. Can I just say about the protein? It's the best tasting protein I've ever had. I look forward to it, and I know they have like
I put the peanut butter. I use the
recipes.
peanut butter protein in my smoothies.
Oh my God, it's incredible. Look for all the listeners out there. We love bringing this all to you for free, but this is one of those partnerships, much like Spoiler Die Cuts, much like Thrustmaster, that is entirely organic and natural. I'm not just promoting this because they're obviously supporting our podcast, but I genuinely use all these things, and I do believe Four Sigmatic is the best coffee and protein in the world right now. So that's why I do it. Let's jump into the racing. We're far into this one. We barely talked about some of the other racing out there. Let's talk about the Cup Series. I thought so. The NASCAR Cup Series got delayed, postponed on Sunday because of rain, of course, because rain is affecting everything NASCAR these days. But they raced on Monday in one of the best short track races of the year. Yes, New Hampshire's a short track, but two, by far one of the best short track races I've ever seen in the next gen era. And a lot of it had to do, and I'm going to take this from Dale Jr., who said that there's 6 grooves on the New Hampshire racetrack. 5 of them were being used at points during this race. It was so cool to watch. I know, and in the Xfinity race, I tried going up to the 4th groove and moving the 3rd groove up, but I found it at times. I passed Sheldon Creed with it. I was making other passes and running up there, but it would go away, and I was like, man, I wonder if I could go higher, and I went higher a couple times, and I just went really slow. And so I was like, okay, that's not coming in. But the Cup Series, as we know, is different. There's a lot more competitive cars that move the groove around. Their cars are different now. They moved that groove to where late in the race, they were going all the way up into that old asphalt that has sealer on it and cutting back down, and it was so cool to watch. I loved it.
So I have a theory. I have never seen this at New Hampshire before. I've driven out in that groove before, and I've tried it, but I've never made it work. and I can't recall seeing anybody make it work. But here's my theory. So a few years ago, when we were on the traction compound kick, New Hampshire was a hot site for traction compound. And they put it in the third groove and the first groove. And then they left the middle groove alone. And then we've gone like 2 years without traction compound, right? But there's always been this residual effect. Like the traction compound is some sticky stuff, right? It is like some serious gorilla snot glue, right? Whatever is in it. It doesn't just go away instantly. It lasts. We've proven it at New Hampshire that it lasts years and over the winters and things like that. They did not reapply last year, but right away you could tell there was grip on the bottom, there was grip in the third groove, there was no grip in the middle. But by the end of the race last year, we could tell that the traction compound was damn near wore off, right?
Yep.
And I would imagine that you noticed there wasn't as much, there was probably not much traction compound effect. Like it must be completely wore off, right? It seems like it.
Yeah, it seems like.
So my theory, I wonder if that third groove traction compound, we never ran in the fourth groove, right? The fourth groove is out of the groove. In fact, it's not just out of the groove, it's off, it's on a different type of pavement, right? Like the pavement has like a berm to it. There's a weird, you know what I'm talking about? Like there's this.
Yeah. It's an like older asphalt and it has sealer on it.
Yeah, it's like a different part of asphalt, right? We never used to run there. But I wonder if when they sprayed the traction compound 2 years ago, that there was overspray that gets into that fourth groove. And that now that we finally wore off all of the good traction compound in the first groove and the third groove, that the drivers were able to find that overspray that hasn't been wore off from the fourth groove.
Yep.
Does that make any sense?
Good point. Makes total sense. And I also think like that stuff, we know so little about that stuff.
Totally unprovable theory, but you know what? It's fun to talk about on a podcast.
No, it isn't. I feel like it could have been moved up there, like sort of sprayed as the cars burn it off on the bottom and maybe tire rubber picks it up and gets thrown out there. And like all those, when we're like you've talked about before where you're under caution, you're weaving back and forth and you're maybe dragging that stuff up the track and it just sort of sits there and doesn't get used. And then suddenly in the Cup Series, the runs are so long and so many competitive cars, you've got to move around. They have to search. And so they eventually light up.
So
something.
What you're talking about too, that's extremely possible. So my favorite was at Bristol. So Bristol, SMI is no stranger to trying, creative things to try to get what they want for the racing product. And when they, we had this one groove racetrack running around the top at Bristol, SMI made a bold effort of like, we're going to do this traction compound on the bottom groove. We want a bottom groove, one lane racetrack so we can bring back, hashtag old Bristol. Well, one time they tried it, they sprayed it down there. We still ended up running the top. Wasn't enough. So the next time we went to Bristol, they were like, we're going to cake it on. And it was like full car width worth of traction compound on the bottom groove in Bristol. And they're like, this is going to do the trick, right? It's going to be so much traction compound, you cannot leave the bottom. Well, they sprayed so much traction compound that you could see the tire marks going up the racetrack. And we basically just took the traction compound, picked it up on our tires, and took it up to the top groove with us. And we still ended up running the top, but then we ended up running the top at record speeds because we were basically running on a traction compound on the top groove because the cars teleported this traction compound from the bottom to the top.
Yep, that sounds feasible.
Anyways,
I think a lot of that's what's happened at New Hampshire. Martin Truex Jr. dominated the race, but man, it didn't feel like it. Like this race felt competitive, and a lot of it, I have to give a shout out to my buddies who I also work with at NBC, who were showing battles for 25th place at times that were like 3 and 4 cars, 5 cars at a time. And it was awesome because they would stay there for 2 or 3 laps. And it just felt important because you looked at these battles and you thought, 25th place. But then you realize, wait a second, Martin Truex is catching them. This matters. They'd moved to a 20th place battle because they were running all these crazy lines. The drivers were trying to just find anything out there. They did such a good job with that. And I'm going to put a little secret out there. So you may have noticed also watching the race that all but probably maybe one driver, maybe every single driver / team was mentioned or had a close-up at one point. And this is something that a lot, not just the production team, but the talent, everyone involved at NBC has really made a priority. And that is that if you're a car on the racetrack, you get an opportunity to be shout out on that broadcast. And I think it's a really big, important thing for the sport. Yeah, and I've seen it, being able to watch these races. I've obviously been a part of them and seen how we're doing it on the production side, and it takes an immense effort. Remember, this is like covering the NFL if all the teams played at once, all at the same time. Imagine trying to cover the NFL the way people cover the NFL, but if every team played at once. That's what we're trying to do, and it's a really, really tough endeavor that takes an immense amount of production behind the scenes and research and effort and reminding ourselves and tracking and all that. But I've just felt it, and I saw the social media during that race yesterday on Monday, and people were like, wow, like they're showing 25th place battles, and it just feels like every driver has gotten a chance to be, shout out at some point with this race. And it's like, well, that's not just happening by chance. That's by design. So pretty cool.
I got a question. I've got a question about that. So I think this was just a sponsorship that was tied with it, but I was watching Xfinity practice, and they had like a timer underneath the pylon on the overlay, and they were showing a car on track, and I had like a 25-second timer, and it was counting down, and it almost looked like when the timer ran out, they would change cars. Is that tied to anything, or do you even know what I'm talking about?
Yes, or is that exactly what you're talking about? So we started this a couple years ago, and this was also an attempt to sort of talk about everyone, right? So that is what we call through the field in practice, and practice shows normally.
Oh, okay.
And the idea being that like you get 20 seconds for each commentator to talk about a specific car, team, what's going on with them, what's going on, what's the big story, what are they fighting, what are they happy about, what's going on in their personal lives, whatever it is, right? Or a pit crew member, something about that race team in 20 seconds that you can go through 10 or 15 cars that maybe wouldn't get a shout out because they're 15th to 28th on the board, right? But instead, this is a way to be like, hey, here's what's going on that team. Here's why we're talking about them, right? So it's a definite, it's a point of focus for the broadcast. But I just really think I saw it so well at New Hampshire, and with that race being exciting racing through the field, I just thought it really stuck out.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Martin Truex Jr. dominated. So of course he's on a hot streak this year. Just in terms of this year since winning the Clash, he has been really at top form, right? But he's 43 years old? Is that right? How old is he?
He's old.
Well, he's not old. Yeah, he's 43 years old. That's right. I'm sorry, I wanted to say this correctly. So, at 43 years old, he is toward, most likely closer to the end of his career than the beginning, obviously just via math and statistics. But he is in peak form, and so he keeps getting the question. He got this last year: are you retiring? Right, and there was a lot of rumors last year that he might retire. He had a clip after the race in the press conference where he basically summed it up by saying, I'm bad at making big decisions, and that he wished he had more time to make the decision, but he doesn't, and so he'll know and we'll know soon. Here's the thing. I think this is a fascinating thing in motorsports, especially NASCAR, because the peak age of a NASCAR Cup driver via statistics is 39, and we're going to get into this a little later. But that means, later than most careers will you be at your peak form if you're able to be there and stay there that long. But it's also a short window because there's a big drop-off around the age he is, just via statistics. And we see this with race car drivers through the decades that have hung around till they barely can make races, or we've seen drivers, just go too far with it. And then we have drivers, very rarely do you ever have a driver that says, hey, I just won, I'm out. Like that never happens. And so I think for Martin Truex Jr., people are like, man, and I even had this discussion with his brother a little bit. And I've said, we go back and forth. And I said, look, you got two options. You win, Denny Hamlin likes to say he'd win his last race. You have that option, and you go out in peak form, or, you go out in a winning fashion in a season, or, do you wait till you can't do it anymore? Kevin Harvick, I think he could win races this year. No doubt in my mind. I think he'll make the playoffs. So he could effectively win his last race, at his age, which would be impressive. But I don't know. It's such an interesting thing to see in real time. Martin Truex kind of go through this decision of, and people might be like, well, why would you ever stop? And it's like, well, remember, it's 38 weeks of the year. Immense travel, immense commitments. There's midweek commitments. Yep. To do as a competitor, you're going to want to do this at 100%, which takes a lot out of you. So yeah, I think it is a big decision for him, and it's interesting to see him do it in real time.
He has a unique story too. I mean, there's no other driver that I can think of that's like him. And please, help me. This guy went his first 360 odd starts of his NASCAR career. He won 3 races, and was pretty much a 20th place driver for those 300 some starts. Now, I'm not joking. And he wasn't in bad equipment. I mean, he drove for DEI. He drove for MWR. Like, he was even... I can remember a time at Furniture Row where they were looking to get rid of him. And there was rumors of that. I guess I don't want to say that factually, but being around the garage, there was always just mumbling of like, oh, he's having a rough year. Are they going to get rid of him? There's rumors, right? Just rumor stuff. And then it was just the Cole Pern era lit him up. And it was almost like it took that crew chief and that era and that whatever they got on to breathe new life into him as a driver, because now he's transcended beyond Cole Pern. Right now, granted, he's still in great equipment, and it's still, it was he morphed beyond Furniture Row into JGR, but like he's, I think in our group thread that you and I share with somebody who will not be named, was even talking about him as like Hall of Fame material. I don't know about that.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but he could be. I mean, hey, if he wins his championship this year, 2-time champion and 34 wins.
Yeah,
like
I mean that's Hall of Fame material. Denny Hamlin,
2 championships and 34 wins is Hall of Fame material. Yeah, Denny's Hall of Fame material because of his ownership and his Daytona 500s. I think
2 championships.
Martin
is definitely
2 championships should probably get you in the Hall of Fame.
It will.
I mean, the way we're talking about it, he's basically at 1.5. Is he are you making him your pick for the championship? I don't know if he's my pick for the championship anyways.
No, he's not my pick.
But like I remember this is a weird, because I'm like backhand compliment. I'm not trying to be cynical about Martin Truex, but like I told you in that group there that we talked about, I can remember like 12 years ago racing for position against him at New Hampshire, thinking, this guy is in so much better equipment than me right now, and I'm beating him. He sucks. And boy, was I wrong. Because look at what he's accomplished since then. But what a transition. Like over 300 starts in the first year career, and had great opportunities, and people were probably ready to write him off, and just something switched.
It's
I don't know.
One of the more remarkable.
Good for him.
Yeah, it's one of the more remarkable career turnarounds we've ever seen. You've had late starters. I was looking up Harry Gant the other day, obviously, who didn't run a full-time season until, what was he, 39 or something? I think you've got stories
Harry.
like that. Mark Martin, who obviously had a
No
time period
rush,
to be
huh?
near. What's that?
No rush for Harry, I guess.
No, none.
Um,
Then you had Mark Martin, who obviously came in young, then went back to ASA, and then came back again in his early 30s, basically. But I think,
yeah.
when you look at this, it's the Cole Pern era, reignites his career. He finds the confidence that flows into them going from Furniture Row to JGR. He then still has James Small, who is was there along the ride with Cole Pern. And I think that's really just, sort of continued, and it's kept his confidence, and it's kept a lot of the same team members around. And so it's just kept, this has been a unit that's working, and that's a tough thing to walk away from. Like, you said it, 3 wins in 360 starts, and now he's in Hall of Fame material, and it's like, you're winning. How could you stop? This is everything you ever wanted.
Yeah. But it's so cool. It really is so cool to see somebody retire at the top, because it makes you feel like they're in control. And,
Yes,
and we don't know the rest of this. We don't know the stories, right? We don't know the stories, but I always think like Brett Favre was my hero growing up in the Midwest, and Green Bay Packers, and it just didn't feel right to see him play for the Jets, right? And and Tom Brady made this big risk going to the Buccaneers, but he won the Super Bowl, and that sort of validated it. But then you hate to see him just keep going beyond, right? So I think Martin, I don't know. It seemed his interviews after the race seemed maybe telling on where his head was at. Not to tease on him a little bit, but I mean, gosh, if you're comparing this decision to whether or not to buy a saltwater boat, it almost tells me where his head is at, where his head has been at. I think I texted you and I was like, man, I just hope Martin can figure out what kind of boat he wants to buy. Good luck, buddy. I'm really praying for you, man. Like, gosh, you felt compelled to share that story with the public. Like, guys, just let me tell you how bad this is tearing me up. I can't even decide what kind of boat to buy. Dude. Maybe he should retire. But I don't know. Good for him. I mean, it's a cool story. For me, I don't know. I feel like I relate to that, because I'm like, hey, does anybody else want to hire a driver that has 300 and some odd Cup starts and very few, if not no, wins? Because I could go from age 34 to 44 and win 30 more races.
I think you could.
Let's try it.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I think you should do it. I think there's an owner out there that should do that. They should. So give you a shot.
You Let's do it.
So another driver over the age of 40 doing big things, and this is a connect in a big way that I want to talk about, just sort of from a higher point of view of what's happening in NASCAR. You have AJ Allmendinger, who we've mentioned on this podcast before, brought in a colleague to go out there, and most likely I think the common methodology was to win a road course to get this challenger team, this young Cup team, into the playoffs. Well, right now, he's sitting after New Hampshire 20 points out. So he's actually not just in position to go win a road course and get them in. He's in position to get them in via points, which at 41 years old in a second, or maybe what we would call this a second stint in Cup, although it's like basically a third, maybe, he is doing big things in a way, that at 41 years old, you would think, a driver might be past doing what he's doing in terms of overall course of the whole season. So I think it's really impressive what he's doing there. But also impressive, and probably more impressive, and I think the single most impressive thing in the NASCAR Cup Series right now is Michael McDowell. And my favorite movie, Landon, is Moneyball, because I've always felt like it's one of the coolest stories. I've read the book twice, and I think it's one of the coolest stories because sports become so formulaic, right? They become so set within rules and such that it's just basically best performer, most money wins. And in motorsports especially, for years, I always wondered, like, if you were going to be able to Moneyball series, it's one going to be the NASCAR Cup Series because it's a long enough season with enough races and enough variety that you could possibly figure out a way to use humans to be just slightly better with a lower budget than some of your bigger budget competitors. Now, for years, though, that wasn't the case because we were building cars, we were manufacturers. You were just going to get outspent and outmoneyed no matter how hard you tried. But in this next-gen era, it's sort of unlocked this idea a little bit of condensing the field. The charter system, the enthusiasm around NASCAR, all the financial stuff happening in the background has sort of unlocked this thing where you could potentially, quote-unquote, moneyball your way into the playoffs and be in a contending car. And Michael McDowell is doing that. So think back last year. He has Blake Harris, who comes as a car chief from Joe Gibbs in the 78 before that. He comes to be a crew chief. He also assembles a car chief and a couple other mechanics at front row, and they go on to be incredible, right? And are really running up front and just consistently in the top 10 and qualifying the top 10 at mile and a half, and it's really unbelievable. And then at the end of the year, the whole team is gutted. Blake Harris goes to Hendrick. A lot of the other crew members, all but basically one guy, were brought to bigger teams who could pay them more because front row just can't, on their budget, feasibly pay or compete against a Hendrick Motorsports, right? So a lot of people thought, okay, maybe it was those guys. Maybe it's Blake that's just doing big things. Well, fast forward. We are now past New Hampshire. 19 races in this season? 20 or so? Six away from the playoffs. Michael McDowell is in on points. He has a rookie crew chief who he picked. He has a bunch of crew members that he personally picked. I watched him in the garage area at Las Vegas last fall in the Xfinity Series with his backpack on, going around and speaking individually to crew members, thinking I might be able to convince them to take a step up into the Cup Series and be a part of my team because they're undervalued talent, right? Well, that to me is the definition of Moneyball, finding underutilized or undervalued talent, and that is what the 34 team is doing. Michael's very coy about it because he doesn't like to sort of promote this too much, but from all intents and purposes, from talking to him, from the people around him that I've been able to speak to, talk about how involved he is in that decision-making. And I just think this is so cool because if you look at the teams he's beating to get into the playoffs right now, it's Hendrick Motorsports, it's Penske, it's Joe Gibbs Racing, it's Trackhouse, it's the who's who of well-funded, top-of-the-line organizations spending well into the 20s of millions to run those cars per car, and he's probably doing it on half of the budget of one of those cars. Just an unbelievable story right now. No matter where this goes, especially if he makes it, I think this is one of the coolest things we've seen in NASCAR in a long time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, and he's a guy that's grinded it out forever. But that, he started that. I wonder what it was that triggered for him to really get after that. To me, that started back when he recruited Drew Blickensturfer to come over there at front row. Like he personally made that happen.
Yep.
And I know that he personally made that happen, even helped financially to make sure that happened, to make sure the money worked to get Drew to come over to front row, which was not a team that Drew was interested in coming over to at the time. And really the proof that you are making, that Michael is the leader there, is not just the fact that the team is succeeding beyond Blake Harris, but to me that the team was assembled with Blake Harris and his group after Drew Blickensturfer.
Yep.
Because at first, like, Drew Blickensturfer came over and their performance increased dramatically, and you could easily say, well, Drew's a pretty proven, like, he would be a dream crew chief for me at any point in my Cup career to have. And when they lost Drew, you would have thought, oh, okay, well, we're just going to see Drew go away and Michael go back to running wherever the 34 is used to running. They bring in Blake, same thing happens again. And they lose Blake, and look at him. It's almost like he keeps getting better.
Literally, better. It's one of the more unbelievable things I've seen in all of global motorsports. And I really don't think there's many series in the world that you could pull this off, that you could do what he's doing. There's not enough races in most of the series for the sample size to work, for the idea. There's not enough variety in tracks and that sort of thing for it to work in other forms of racing. So, and there's not enough competitors, right? And there's not the playoff system that allows you to sort of be, able to sort of look at the season differently than just straight up finishing places. And there's not stage points in other series, which allow you to look at races differently. So you can do a lot of things differently.
This is the ultimate product of what is supposed to happen with this next gen car. Is that on your best day, like in the old car, a small team on your best day could crack the top 20, right? All you're ultimately doing is maximizing your equipment and beating some guys that underutilize their superior equipment. But now the actual hardware is all the same. So on your best day, you can be the best. And that's what we've seen with teams like the 34 and even Trackhouse. It's like we've talked about how we need to stop talking about them like a challenger team, because they do have superior support, but they are a key partner team, but they're not a legacy organization that has their own engine shop and things like that. And they're, obviously on their best day, they can not just win, but they can dominate races.
Yeah.
So that's, examples like that are the reason why this next gen car was brought in.
And I wonder how this success, now not just over one season, not just 2 seasons, but really almost 3 seasons, and I know only 2 of the next gen, but really from what we've seen out of this 34 car and the rise they've had, what this does for other organizations to look at their model and say, wait a second, what are they focusing on that we're not? Because they're not spending money like we are, but they're finding these people, and how are they finding them? And how are they doing this? How are they spending so little and having such success? And how can we incorporate that? And I know, Michael's in the conversation in the rumor mill for the 10 car if Eric Almirola is to retire, and for the right reasons. He should be. He's doing a great job and doing big things. And maybe part of that's not just him. It's, hey, man, whatever you're doing there, come bring that. Show us how to do
bring
that
it over here.
like not just your driving, like for a driver to be hired, not just because he's a great driver, but to be hired to be like, whatever you've just figured out in your processes and systems and evaluation of talent, we want you over here to do that, and we're going to give you all the money too. So here, see what you can do now. I think that'll be really interesting if he gets there. And I want to take this just one step further in that when you look at the playoffs right now, we talk about an AJ Allmendinger. We talk about a Martin Truex Jr. who's 43 years old. AJ Allmendinger is 41. Michael McDowell, 38, about to be entering his what's considered the peak year for a NASCAR stock car driver in the Cup Series at 39 years old. You have Brad Keselowski, who's in the playoffs right now. He's 39. They're knocking out drivers like Bowman, Suarez, Gibbs, Haley, Cindric, Chase Elliott, Ryan Preece, Eric Jones, Chase Briscoe, all the young ones, not quite there.
I mean, those are some drivers.
Fascinating.
There are some drivers that are seriously on notice. Like, gosh, I'm just looking at Chase Briscoe, Harrison Burton, Austin Dillon. Like, that's a interesting scenario. But I guess that's that's gonna be the beauty of the parity in this car is those drivers that are on notice right now. They could easily have a hot streak of 10 or 15 races either this year or next year, and find themselves right back up there. I mean, you go all the way down to 26th in points is Ryan Preece, right? And think, oh man, Ryan's got to be on notice, but he's 97 points back, and that is a lot of points. But that can be made up in 3 or 4 weeks.
He's also the second highest,
really solid weeks.
Yeah, he's the second highest SHR car. Now I think Chase had a penalty at one point there, so I mean you got to look at that. But it's just, to me, age is such a funny thing in motorsports because forever, people are on this whole syndrome of like younger, better, and all that stuff, and yet all the statistics tell you the opposite. And I just like to see that in the next, this idea of parity and the car mattering less than the competitor, and that we're seeing now in the second year of this car a seriously weighted results for older drivers, for more experienced older drivers. And that's not just because I'm 32, and you see a guy like Josh Berry going to Cup at 32 or 33. I just think it's I've always thought this was a fascinating thing about this sport, and it's just interesting to see it sort of panning out that way. So we'll see what the average age of the playoffs is, but I have to wonder if it sits as it is now and just one or two other changes, it could be maybe one of the older playoff fields since the playoffs have been around, which would be interesting.
Yep.
Also, Shane Van Gisbergen, by the way. Well, hold on. He won his first outing as a Supercars driver. He has now enticed Brody Kostecki to come over here and drive a third car for Richard Childress Racing at Indianapolis. It'll be sponsored by Mobile X, which is basically the founder of Boost Mobile in Australia, Peter Addington. It's one of his new companies. I follow him because of Supercars. Mm-hmm. He sponsors James Courtney over in Supercars. He's sponsored a bunch of drivers. And kind of cool to see, but I don't know if we should all be expecting the same result like Shane, because Indy, double file restarts, turn one, good luck.
Yeah, and also, now we're a little bit more on equal playing field with the Cup drivers. Indy road course is not too unfamiliar for these guys. Much more simpler race course as well. So it'll be a little bit more equipment dependent. And I don't think that the street racing background of a Supercars driver will carry as much of an advantage at Indy as it did at the street course, especially, the Chicago street course where Cup drivers had no experience. So it'll be interesting to see how Brody does. If Brody comes in and does anything similar to what Shane Van Gisbergen did at Chicago, then I think Cup drivers need to stop everything and learn to drive on a road course. But if
all of us,
yeah, every single one of us, living or deceased Cup drivers, aspiring Cup drivers, every USAC sprint car driver that wants to make it to NASCAR, every super late model driver in the world, if Brody Kostecki goes to Indy road course and qualifies in the top 3 and wins that race, then it is going to be game on for the driver market. It would. I'm okay. Now I'm being dramatic, but you know what? Let's just be dramatic for a second. It would blow up the driver market, I think. Let's just say. It. Why wouldn't
I think so. They probably
SVG winning Chicago. We can make all kinds of excuses for why SVG won Chicago. Half the race was in the rain. It was a street course. It was a new track. Drivers didn't know it. Street course. Supercars driver on street course. Blah 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 blah. All those things. If Brody Kostecki comes to a track that NASCAR drivers already know and beats him at it on his first try, just like SVG did, why wouldn't it completely blow up every team that's looking to hire a new driver and say, oh, okay, how much we got to pay these guys? Right? Why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't you?
Well, and Brody does have a little stock car experience. He did some K&N starts back, I think, 2016 era. Did some K&N starts on some ovals and everything. So he has some stock car experience.
Yeah, these Supercars drivers, I know we talked about them back when we were talking about versatility and stuff. We talked about them being one-dimensional. But maybe not those drivers being one-dimensional, but the Supercars series. because they're essentially stock cars on road courses, right? But those drivers seem to be into a lot of types of racing. I mean, SVG, I had no idea the guy's races on dirt and all kinds of stuff.
Does rally, does all sorts of stuff. So, well, I do agree.
Maybe here's another thing that maybe we're finding is maybe Australia is just a honeypot for stock car racing talent that we have not tapped.
Marcus Ambrose was just a taste of the honey.
Maybe Marcus Ambrose came in and couldn't have showed us a better example of what the talent is that's down there, and the whole sport ignored it.
Yeah.
Or maybe he wasn't in the right equipment. He had a great career, and had success, but he just, at RPM through an era where equipment mattered so much. It could have been his personality. Maybe he didn't identify with some big brands and really take off as a business, but like for whatever reason, Marcus, I mean, he alone didn't, he came in and then nobody followed him, or the teams didn't follow him. Maybe the teams weren't sophisticated enough to think and see about what's going on. But now that we've got this next gen car, maybe we're about to find out that there's a hell of a lot more where that came from when it comes to SVG.
Yeah.
So anyways, let's bring in the other side of the conversation. Or Brody qualifies 15th and gets wrecked on a restart. Qualifies 22nd, gets wrecked on a restart. Welcome to NASCAR. Chase Elliott, don't worry, you're going to be fine.
Tyler Reddick, it's all good, don't worry. We're all good.
Yeah,
stock car racers are safe.
Austin Dillon, don't worry, you'll be fine. We're gonna, as long as we race at Richmond for the next 50 years, you'll be fine.
Oh, no one will know. That's funny. All right. Moving on to NASCAR to Formula One. Big rumor. The FIA is approving the F1 and the Andretti F1 team bid. Now, this is only one part of the equation. The FIA have shown the most support from the beginning when Michael Andretti was very vocal about wanting this team to happen. The teams have all basically denied his want to buy one. That's not happening. Now, here's the interesting part. If the FIA approve the adding of their team to Formula One, the teams and FOM, which FOM is basically Liberty Media, can veto that decision. But there is potentially a scenario where they could race, but they would receive no prize money. So basically losing out on 40 to 100 million in revenue per year from the sport.
In the NASCAR world, this would be racing as an open car.
Yes, but even worse because you'd just be zero. Yep. Yeah, you'd be zero.
Right.
So, but maybe not worse because you couldn't miss a race. So you wouldn't miss the Monaco Grand Prix because you just have to show up. Whereas a team unchartered in NASCAR Cup Series could effectively miss the Daytona 500, which would be massively detrimental.
Right. These guys would get a grid spot in every race. Exactly.
So we'll follow this. I remember I had heard a while back that this was getting approved. We said on this podcast, but it just seemed like there's a lot of contention though amongst the teams and Liberty Media who just do not want it to happen. They feel like their model is good. Everything's great right now. They don't want to mess it up. So we'll see. This is going to be interesting. Boardroom battles continue in Formula One.
It's interesting. Yeah. Would they race for no prize money? I think they would. I don't know.
I think they would.
I mean, they got all their money lined up.
Yeah. I think that'd be a tough thing.
I don't know Andretti that intimately, but knowing Andretti, everything he's got put together to be able to get this far, he's got to be able to have it budgeted to where prize money is, even if it's $40 million. Like, he's got to be able to put together the money to run this thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to pay
do
for
the
that.
numbers. Yeah, somebody's got to pay for it. You do the numbers on this. The only thing you got to do though, sometimes
it's got deep pockets. But I don't know how deep.
You know what makes you feel this isn't a lot of money though? When you see that a 1 football team, NFL team does about $3.5 billion in revenue per year, and you realize that the entirety of the Cup Series is like 3.5. It's way less than that.
The whole business, the whole industry,
and the whole Formula One is less. It's like, oh my gosh, this is wild. So yeah, it does feel big, but then in context, other pro sports, maybe it's not. I don't know. We'll see. We'll keep following that. We'll stay on the rumor mill and keep our ears to the ground. And then just one more thing from Formula One that came out today. Many may remember Niclas Latifi, what they call him, Goat Tifi or Latifi Goat, or whatever, who was, had a tough time exiting Formula One when he was in that wreck that caused the safety car that allowed Max Verstappen to go around Lewis Hamilton to win the championship back in 2021. He's been out of racing since then, and he just recently went public saying that he's going to take a break from racing and go pursue his MBA at 28 years old.
Nice.
So, yeah, nice for him. Make that decision. I'm just curious, when's the VC firm announcement coming?
Does he have like family money or something to seed fund?
Yes, lots.
Patagonia vest already lined up with the family logo on it. $50 million seed funds.
Yeah, Fund One, $50 million. Thanks to all the LPs, $49 million from the family. That sort of thing. On that note,
maybe his family was like, "All right, the money is yours. You just can't spend it on racing." All right, okay,
exactly.
Can you get me into Harvard?
He's gonna get his MBA in London. Formula E had some races this past weekend in Rome. They had a massive crash. Two of the title rivals crashed as well. We don't need to dive into all that, but it was interesting. Go catch the highlights. You can get it on the Money Lap newsletter email. IndyCar raced at Toronto this past weekend. Christian Lundgaard won by a massive amount, but the cool part was Alex Palou finishing second with a front wing being held on by basically a wrap, which was wild. And
so our greatness watch is still intact. Greatness watch is still intact.
Yes, still intact.
Watching greatness with Alex Palou. Very good.
Alex Palou is doing unbelievable things still. With basically, he had the wing was basically being held on by the wrap, and he still somehow finished the race in second. It was wild to watch. And just one announcement that came out today: Connor Daly will be back in the number 60 for Meyer Shank, since Simon Pagenaud is still recovering from that wreck at Mid-Ohio. So he'll be back. Tom Blomqvist got the shot at Toronto. Unfortunately, got wrecked on lap 1, but showed some speed in qualifying. Ooh. So maybe he'll get another shot. It's interesting, but for Iowa, our buddy Connor Daly will be back in it. So that's the run-through. Right. I want to tell everyone, go watch the Firecracker 400 qualifying this week. Twitch.tv/eraser_GG or just eraser.gg. I'm doing triple duty at Pocono, Landon, so I'm racing trucks, Xfinity on Saturday, both on Saturday, and then I'm also doing TV Sunday. So wish me luck this weekend.
Nice. Well, good luck. It'll be fun. I'm excited about the Firecracker. Hoping to invoke some special moments. It's been emotional for a lot of people qualifying in, racing their way in. I have no idea if our listeners are interested in NASCAR related or esports related stuff, but if you are, give it a listen.
Definitely. Go check it out. And next week we'll be recording this podcast the day before the big show. So the next Wednesday will be the big Firecracker 400 on our Twitch. That'll be cool. So anyway, I'm going to Pocono this weekend, and we're going to go qualify some retro stock cars tonight and tomorrow. Peace. Hey, before you go, please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, click the bell icon below to be alerted to our latest videos. We also request that you let us know every single thing that we did wrong in this video or prior ones in the comment section below. We might just go through and answer them, or you'll make it to the next episode of the podcast or our next video. Also, subscribe on your favorite listening platform to be able to listen to this podcast on the go. And subscribe to our newsletter at themoneylap.com to get the best 5 minutes in motorsports delivered directly to your email inbox every Tuesday and Thursday. Thanks for watching.